Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're finally going to be talking about the newest album from Marilyn Manson called Heaven Upside Down. So here's one of the byproducts of the rather weird way I got into metal and by extension industrial music. Almost by accident, I completely missed Marilyn Manson. Seriously, it's actually a little bit bizarre how up until very recently when I went through his entire discography, I just completely missed covering the industrial iconoclast or even hearing a lot of his music beyond the covers that managed to cross over. As I said in the past, I never really had an angry white boy phase, and I found goth music and by extension goth culture more through symphonic metal or black metal or early post-punk and industrial music more than the mutated hybrids that came out in the 90s and early 2000s that spawned acts like Marilyn Manson. Now, that's not saying that he doesn't have a place in modern pop culture, because I'd argue he most certainly does. From the 90s breakout albums produced by Trent Reznor to his numerous artistic pivots throughout the early 2000s. And yeah, they have some values going back through that discography. But in retrospect, you often get the impression that his image has persisted a lot longer than a lot of his music actually has. It's one of the reasons that I actually respect his pop sensibility. If you're aware your currency is in shock value, you might as well pair it up with tunes and hooks that can be pretty damn catchy that'll at least stick when all but the professionally outraged set grows up. But that's the thing. Folks who did grow up with Marilyn Manson, they grew up into adults, and he was still making music. And after severing ties with Interscope, you could tell that he was probing into some different territory with a little bit of uncertainty, going from metal with Born Villain, and even pivoting towards blues with The Pale Emperor, with the backing of producer and composer Tyler Bates now behind him. But I knew it would only be a matter of time before he pivoted back towards what made his career in the first place, and given the buzz was suggesting the political undercurrent was going to be flowing free again, I figured Marilyn Manson's natural gift for provocation could actually pay off pretty well here. And even if, again, I'm no big fan of this guy's music, I could easily rattle off a slew of other gothic acts that I find more potent than Marilyn Manson. Hell, I've covered a few of them this year. I figure, might as well take a look. So, okay, what did we unearth with this? Well, honestly, this record didn't really make much of an impression on me. At all. And really, if there was a time in my life that this would fit right up my alley, it would be right now, but in a sense, that might actually be the problem. When I'm regularly immersed in more abrasive, shocking, or potent industrial-leaning music, I'm just not all that wowed by what Marilyn Manson is bringing to the table today. But going even beyond that, for all the talk that Heaven Upside Down is a return to form, it feels more like a pale imitation of some sounds and topics that, frankly, he did before and he did better 20 years ago on Antichrist Superstar and Mechanical Animals. Not a precisely bad project per se, but when you find out that at least two songs are interpolating better songs that Marilyn Manson has made in the past, you're not exactly going to be surprised by this, and that's not a good thing going into a Marilyn Manson project. But okay, let's start off with the content, where reportedly Marilyn Manson was aiming to get more political this time around, and yet I can't in good conscience say that happens. What instead we get is an outgrowth of much of the same nihilism that's always flowed through his work, only painted with a much larger and broader brush on the world at large, focusing on people who are too stupid or lacking in self-awareness to actually admit the evil of their actions, at least at first, or on the desperate flocking to believe in something being taught by somebody who doesn't believe in anything. And then, amidst the growing chaos and all the violence, we have Marilyn Manson, living in a world that more than ever reflects some of his worldview. And even he seems to be asking how far people will go down this path, his path. And for his tortured outlook, fueled by ravenous consumption, especially of younger artists who would love to parrot him, a lot of cocaine abuse, and a heavier vampiric undercurrent than ever before, he embraced this side of nihilism because he needed it to fill the void within. And yet, for everyone else, when the veneers are all ripped away, he's not all that surprised to see the same voids yearning to be filled in all these other people. After all, he's not attracting what he wants, but who he is, that mirrored reflection, which is damaged, sadistic, and yet never quite all at the point of just ending all of it. So okay, you throw up a mirror to the audience, that's all the more obvious in today's day and age. That could be pretty potent of an underlying theme. But again, it does feel a little bit obvious, and the fact that it doesn't feel all that satisfying to Marilyn Manson might be left in the subtext, but it does linger here, perhaps only obscured by the blood and the sex, and did I mention the piles of cocaine? But here's the first problem. For as much as Marilyn Manson can be a convincing presence behind the microphone, doing the guttural whispers, the screams, and a Bowie impression that he's working harder than ever before, all behind a thick film of vocal layering, the writing can't help but feel blunter than it probably should be. Marilyn Manson might not indulge in the glamour of his nihilistic impulses as much as he did 20 years ago, but that doesn't mean that the poetry had to take a tilt for the painfully obvious, or in some cases just kinda silly, even for gothic metal. The counting on Revolution 12, the homophone driving off the hook of Say 10, pretty much all of the cocaine references on Jesus Christ, that just feels kind of overloaded with them. Hell, for as much as he used the phrase upside down on Blood Honey in the title track, it started to feel a little bit cartoonish, to be honest. Hell, it's not even particularly shocking or graphic. A little bit edgy, sure, but not in a way that actually gets under my skin the same way like someone like Chelsea Wolfe will. My favorite line of this entire album is, "So what's a nice place like this doing round people like us?" I mean, it's simple, it's a conversational phrase that's flipped into something unsettling. It works for what it is. And yet it's on a pre-chorus before Marilyn Manson howls that he knows where you fucking live, and the subtlety just goes right out the window. And that's the frustrating thing about the album. There are some subtle elements of symbolism and language on songs like Say 10 or the title track. I mean, not the homophone, but go beyond that. But again, it's not consistent. And again, when you have Manson actively interpolating previous songs for more imagery, it can feel, well, a little bit lacking in ideas. So okay, fine, maybe the production can make up for a lot of it. Well, here's the thing. As I said before, Marilyn Manson has two big advantages throughout his entire career: a knack for really good pop hooks and surrounding himself with great producers. And getting Trent Reznor early on was a huge boon for him that really does not get enough credit. And I hate to say it, Tyler Bates is no Trent Reznor or Twiggy Ramirez. And yet, as much as this record is trying to imitate both some of those industrial and glam touches of Manson's heyday, it's impossible to avoid the comparison. There's just not the same atmosphere. Now, there are some grooves that have some of that slimy industrial muscle, that louder grind in the hook where we know where you fucking live against the wiry murk on the verses. A contrast that gets even more pronounced on Say 10 with the metallic layers spiking off the piano and sparse sandy beat, the synth careening off a pretty solid guitar melody on Kill For Me. Even some of the glam elements on Threats of Romance managed to work, but these are not songs that showcase incredible instrumental chops, or even some of Manson's best hooks, or even tones and atmosphere that I couldn't otherwise hear in other industrial metal, or even some of the more experimental sides of hip-hop. I mean, I swear, a bunch of these tones on Tattooed in Reverse, they sound very reminiscent of what Sims put on More Than Ever last year, and frankly he did it better. Except for this song here has wonky blues digressions that fit a lot less effectively this time around than when he did it on The Pale Emperor. And that's where you just get the gurgling tones on Jesus Crisis and Blood Honey that not only don't really enhance the atmosphere, but also seem to have sucked out much of the air out of the mix as well. The songs just don't have that same bombast to them. Then we get the near 8-minute behemoth of Saturnalia, where I do like the overall groove and the ambition. The hook's pretty good, but it's also a song that doesn't really have much in the way of momentum in its instrumental passages, and the transitions feel really clumsy. It doesn't really earn its 8-minute length, and that's a common feeling across many of these compositions. The main idea is established relatively quickly, pretty straightforward, and then we're stuck asking, well, what's next? Expecting a pivot or a surprise that never really comes. And come to think of it, that might be apt for summarizing a lot of my feelings on a lot of the lyrics too, and maybe the album as a whole. Now, I'm not going to say that Marilyn Manson ran out of ideas with this project, but even despite the mountains of cocaine, if everybody else is now embracing your Sam brand of nihilism in America in 2017, you gotta admit you're losing some of that same shocking power if you don't pivot or dive deeper to deconstruct or dissect it. And I gotta be honest, a lot of nihilistic art just doesn't do it for me, and Marilyn Manson doesn't really go above and beyond here. As an ideological villain, Marilyn Manson was never supposed to win this war. I'm not sure he knows what to do with it now that he's closer than ever to that victory in a way that he never expected it would come. And for me, as someone who didn't really grow up with Marilyn Manson, doesn't have the same nostalgia, this can't help but feel like a grasping facsimile of sounds and tones he frankly did better before. As such, strong 5 out of 10, a recommendation for fans, but otherwise check out Mechanical Animals and Antichrist Superstar a lot more. They are better records. And as for Marilyn Manson, I got no idea what he will need to get his edge restored properly to be that proper pop culture boogeyman, but he's too much of a pop culture figure right now to be gone for long. Whatever it is, something will be coming. I just hope it's good. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe. I'd be more than grateful. I know, fans, look, I'm not a huge fan of Marilyn Manson. It happens. I just kind of missed him growing up. I don't have that same nostalgia factor, and this didn't do a lot for me. But if you want to buy the record, links in the description below, and I got the poll up there so all you Marilyn Manson fans can tell me how wrong I am. Looking forward to it. Beyond that, if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, the link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for those higher tier contributors, you get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right over there, but till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.